In the summer of 2002, Marvel announced one of the most unusual and controversial promotional campaigns in comic history. Due to ongoing disputes between its publisher Bill Jemas and then Captain Marvel writer Peter David, the company unveiled the You Decide competition. This bizarre contest would pit 3 titles against each other over 6 issues, with the winner becoming an ongoing series, while the others would be cancelled and their creators would suffer humiliating or career-threatening consequences. What started as a simple disagreement over creative direction resulted in one of comics' most baffling publicity stunts, as well as a series often regarded as one of the worst comic books ever made. The story of Marvel You Decide has always intrigued me, but while the books themselves are interesting for better or worse, the real story behind why this experiment was created and the fallout from it is even more fascinating. So in this video, I want to explain the history behind the You Decide campaign, discuss its inception and the creation of its 3 titles, Captain Marvel, Ultimate Adventures and Marville, and consider how an argument between a publisher and a long-standing writer led to one of Marvel's most disastrous creative decisions. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. The history of Marvel You Decide is actually the story of 3 specific individuals, Bill Jemas, Joe Quesada, and Peter David. Jemas was a highly controversial figure within comics at this time. The former president of trading card company Phial, he was appointed as Marvel's publisher and executive vice president in February of 2000. He took over Marvel only a handful of years after they filed for bankruptcy, and embarked on a series of daring, oftentimes polarizing stunts and creative shake-ups to revive the once prosperous company. Among Jemas's biggest successes was the creation of the Ultimate Universe, expanding the company's distribution channels to mass-market retailers like Paylor Shoes, and the appointment of new editor-in-chief Joe Quesada. Quesada had been a rising star in the comics industry throughout the 1990s. As an artist, he had found success at DC, co-creating Azrael, before he and Jimmy Palmiotti launched Marvel Knights, a creator-focused subdivision of Marvel that paired exciting new writers and artists with then stagnant characters. While many of Jemas and Quesada's ideas proved to be successful, they also weren't without backlash. Although Jemas's leadership was unquestionably successful from a business standpoint, he often clashed with Marvel staff and creators. One writer he frequently butted heads with was Peter David, a longtime figure within Marvel, best known for his work on the Hulk, who was currently in the midst of writing Captain Marvel. Alongside artist Chris Cross, David had relaunched Captain Marvel in 1999, taking the relatively new character of Janice Vell, the genetically engineered son of Marvell, the original Captain Marvel, and telling a fun, complex and thought-provoking series about legacy and cosmic expectations with a light-hearted and comedic twist, showcasing Janice's relationship with Rick Jones as the two are bonded together. While Captain Marvel was never a top-selling book for the company, David's run was widely regarded as an excellent series. At the time of him and Jemas's falling out, the series had ran for over 30 issues, the longest since the original series concluded in February 1979. In early 2002 though, Jemas announced that several of the company's lowest selling books would see a 75-cent price increase. This applied to all titles selling less than 25,000 copies a month, and included the likes of Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz's Spider-Girl, Christopher Priest's Black Panther, and David's Captain Marvel. Upset at this decision, David wrote an impassioned open letter to Jemas, claiming that raising the book's price wouldn't recoup any lost revenue, and would simply drive away the audience it already had. As he explained,
"Here you've got a title with a loyal readership. It can't be perceived that by raising it a quarter, you are rewarding that readership by allowing the book to continue. And some of them are indeed grateful and have the attitude that they would pay any amount of money to keep reading it. But not all of them. There is certainly a percentage who will feel that they are getting screwed, that Marvel is rewarding their continued support by singling them out to bear an increased cost. Many fans come into stores with a set amount of money that they're going to spend. If a rise in a book's price puts it over that set amount, they drop the title.
David's comments, though, unsurprisingly angered both Jemas and Quesada, with the former even considering firing the writer and taking over Captain Marvel himself. Instead, though, he chose to embrace this controversy and launch a promotional event that would see him and David essentially go to war, each writing a 6-issue series, with the bestseller surviving. As part of this event, Captain Marvel would be relaunched with a new #1 issue, and without the increased price, while Jemas and artist MD Bright would create an all-new comic called Marville. It was also stipulated that if David's book won the contest, Jemas would sit in a dunk tank at an upcoming Wizard World convention. However, if David lost, Captain Marvel would be outright cancelled and he would likely be fired from Marvel entirely. Joe Quesada also joined this competition, spearheading a new series called Ultimate Adventures set within the fledgling Ultimate Universe, and promised to take a pie in the face if his project lost. Marvel formally unveiled the You Decide initiative in the summer of 2002. Quesada, speaking with CBR at this time, explained the idea behind this unusual promotional event, stating that
the idea behind it was to give a much maligned title like Captain Marvel, which was suffering in the sales department, some much needed attention. We thought it was a fun stunt and help us launch some new books. It's 3 guys in a playground saying that one is better than the other. Part of the agreement with Peter David was that if we do this, he gets to launch Captain Marvel with a new #1, but he has to try and make the book more accessible.
With the stakes set and a 6-month time frame mapped out, each creative team got to work bringing their respective books to life. Then, in September of 2002, the You Decide contest officially began, as readers ventured to their local comic stores to potentially buy one of these strange new titles and determine the fate of not just its titular characters, but the very creators responsible for them. With the You Decide contest officially underway, the debut issues of its 3 titles were all released on September the 18th, 2002. Before I dive into the plot of each title, it's worth noting that a simultaneous release wasn't maintained throughout the entire event. While Jemas' Marville and David's Captain Marvel regularly hit shelves around the same time each month, Quesada's Ultimate Adventures experienced numerous delays, with only 3 issues releasing by the time the contest ended, and the series wasn't formally concluded until January of 2004. Let's start with the one that you're probably here for. Let's talk about Marville. Despite being often regarded as one of the worst comics of all time, Jemas actually intended for Marville to be satirical, designed to parody the comics industry, and in particular Marvel's main competitor, DC. This was at a time when DC's parent company Time Warner had just completed a massive merger with AOL. Jemas, who had taken over Marvel in the late 90s and helped stabilise the company after its bankruptcy case, wanted to comment on DC's role in this huge corporate acquisition and its uncertain future compared to the newfound prosperity that Marvel was experiencing under his leadership. If you're thinking, what does any of this have to do with actual superheroes or the Marvel Universe? Well, me too. Jemas wrote every issue of Marville, while MD Bright, an acclaimed artist known for his work on Iron Man, Green Lantern, Icon, and co-creating the Valiant series Quantum and Woody, provided the art. For all of Marvel's faults and the legitimate complaints against this series, Bright's art is certainly not one of them. Throughout the run, Bright's work remains at a high standard, which is impressive given the bizarre and nonsensical situations he's forced to illustrate in each and every issue. The plot of Marville is a lot, but I'll try and break it down as straightforwardly as possible. The comic begins in the year 5002, where an unnamed person talking directly to the reader admires a newly built comic book shop. Earth is then ravaged by a meteor strike, with Ted Turner, the vice chairman of AOL Time Warner, and his real-life wife Jane Fonda rushing to place their teenage son Cal in a time machine. Cal is then sent back to the present day in order to safeguard him from the planet's destruction, arriving in New York City at the turn of the millennium and sporting a Marvel Enterprises t-shirt, with Ted stating that his company, DC, sucked at the time that he's going back to. These opening 9 pages set out the overarching tone that would define Marville. Not only is the premise an obvious Superman pastiche, with the comic's name even lampooning the recent Smallville TV show, but it also tries to parody several real-world figures in the world of comics, such as Ted Turner, Paul Levitz, and Ron Perelman. It's a deeply on-the-nose story that feels like an in-joke playing out in front of the world. The rest of issue 1 follows Cal AOL in the present day, where he befriends a taxi driver called Mickey and thwarts both a bank robbery and a mugging. In issue 2, Cal and Mickey encounter a homeless man revealed to be Peter David. Iron Man and Black Panther kill a group of civilians, and for some reason Batman is also there and joins them. The hero's rampage is then stopped by conservative talk show host Rush Limbaugh, before Cal, after also meeting Spider-Man, Daredevil and the Punisher, is taken to meet the Kingpin, who is revealed to actually be director Spike Lee. Issue 3 takes an even more bizarre turn, as this comic features no word balloons or thought bubbles. Instead, the issue script is simply printed on top of MD Bright's art. This issue is mostly focused on Cal meeting God and Gemmis taking aim at organised religion. There isn't too much to say here in terms of plot, but I will note that beginning with issue 2, all of Marville's covers now feature highly sexualised women in provocative situations. The women featured don't factor into the plots of any of these comics and are simply there to make Marville stand out on shelves and hopefully sell more copies. Issue 4 does thankfully see the word balloons return and follows Cal as he witnesses evolution taking place, meeting a talking platypus before the final page reveals that the otter that they brought back to the present has somehow evolved into Wolverine. Yes, that wasn't a typo. Given that Gemmis had recently co-wrote Origin the year previously, which canonically told Logan's backstory for the first time, this revelation seems to be Gemmis satirizing his own work, with Wolverine now being depicted as a teenager who literally mutated from an animal to a human. Issue 5 sees Cal, Mickey, God and Logan travel through time, observing the creation of politics and religion as society develops. Issue 6 once again breaks from the book's primary form, recapping the events of the series so far and revealing the entire story to be something Cal is pitching to a comic book publisher. In one final playful jab at the industry, Cal's story is rejected by an unseen executive, who states that readers want superheroes in action, not philosophical satire. Despite Udicide running for 6 issues, Marville did produce a 7th installment in May of 2003. However, this issue was actually a promotional piece for the company's new Epic Comics initiative, consisting solely of information about the Epic line and how aspiring creators can submit to be a part of it. As a whole, Marville is one of the most baffling and confusing comics I have ever read. While Bill Gemmis's intent was clearly to poke fun at the wider industry, the book almost immediately loses focus of any clear narrative and devolves into a collection of random and incoherent skits that don't have much to say beyond surface level parody. Although MD Bright's art is of high standard, the series is frankly nonsensical and only exists because of Gemmis's desire to throw jabs at his employees and corporate contemporaries. Marville's legacy is perhaps best summarised by longtime editor Tom Brevoort, who in 2022 stated,
"Marville was one of the most inept and narcissistic projects the company has ever put out. It was bad in a way that defies description, as the only audience for the material seemed to be Bill himself. But at this point, Bill was the absolute boss, and there was nobody who could easily say no to him, especially on his own vanity project."
In terms of sales, Marville unsurprisingly failed to resonate with readers. While its debut issue sold an estimated 30,000 copies, this can largely be attributed to the promotional buzz surrounding the Udicide contest. And as each new issue was released, interest in the title quickly collapsed and never recovered. It speaks volumes that in the 2 decades since, Marville has never once been collected as a trade or made available to read digitally on sites like Marvel Unlimited. Despite this though, Marville has earned a reputation as one of the worst mainstream comics ever produced, and an example of an executive using his position to publish books that otherwise wouldn't exist. Before we continue, I just want to take a quick moment and remind you that this video and every video on the channel is brought to you by patreon.com/Owen Likes Comics. If you'd like to support my work, get early access to each new video, and special bonus videos every month, consider signing up for just $1 per month. I'll leave links in the description and the pinned comment, or just go to patreon.com/Owen Likes Comics. Thanks for all of your support, and let's get back to the video. Captain Marvel by Peter David and Chris Cross is largely a continuation of the previous run on the character, picking up with Genus Vell grappling with his cosmic awareness and the moral complexities of experiencing the universe's problems all at once. While we witness Genus perform various heroics, we're also reintroduced to Rick Jones in the Microverse. As Genus tries to stop an alien invasion led by the Badoon though, he suffers a breakdown and falls unconscious. Stuck within the Microverse, Rick tries to wake Genus up to no avail, only to discover he's been trapped in this dimension by entropy. Captain Marvel eventually wakes up and returns to Earth, teaming up with the Punisher in issue 2, while his mental state continues to deteriorate, with Entropy explaining that he wants to drive Genus insane as part of his plan to destroy the universe. In issue 3, Genus Vell returns to the Kree homeworld of Hala and adopts a new costume designed by Alex Ross. This new look was designed as part of the You Decide initiative, but was intentionally held off until issue 3 to give the comic an additional sales boost. This return home doesn't help Genus's instability though, as he kills a military general who previously trained his father and steals his costume. He's then enlisted into the Kree Imperial Army. However, after leading an attack on the Shi'ar Empire, Captain Marvel betrays his leaders when he's asked to execute a Kree spy, instead killing his battalion before shooting himself. In the afterlife, Genus encounters his father Marville, who reassures him that death is inevitable and must be accepted. Enraged, Genus attacks his father and unleashes a primal scream that causes Entropy to appear alongside him. Entropy promises to end the hero's madness if Genus aids him in destroying the universe, with Captain Marvel reluctantly agreeing. In the climactic issue, Genus and Entropy have seemingly ended the universe and killed Eternity, the cosmic embodiment of time and Entropy's father, with only Rick Jones being left alive. Rick shares a tense exchange with his former friend, disavowing his actions and Genus's newfound belief that he's become a god. While they argue though, Entropy becomes dejected, having now accomplished his dream and escaping his father's shadow, but having nothing to show for it. In an act of compassion, Rick states that the way to truly escape Eternity's shadow is to create new life and not destroy it. Captain Marvel then shoots his gun into the void, and this kickstarts a new Big Bang, with reality returning to normal alongside them. Back on Earth, Genus and Rick reconnect and resume their duties as Captain Marvel, with the former being seemingly cured of his cosmic awareness. However, the final page sees Genus be overwhelmed by flashes of madness, suggesting this saga is far from over. David and Chris Cross's Captain Marvel is quite an interesting series in retrospect. Although a continuation of an earlier run, it marks a darker and more serious tone for the character, focusing heavily on Genus Vell's mental struggles and manipulation by Entropy, alongside the growing divide between himself and Rick Jones. Whereas the initial title found strength in the odd couple dynamic, these issues portray them as two friends growing further apart in ideology, and even at the story's conclusion, it seems like things won't ever be the same for Captain Marvel. As I noted earlier, Peter David's run on this series had amassed a vocal and loyal fanbase over the years, with this adoration being reflected in the relaunched comic sales. According to data from Comic-Con, the first issue sold over 55,000 copies, while the sixth issue, the final entry in the You Decide contest, still sold over 30,000. While these numbers aren't chart-topping, they did mark a consistent improvement that steered the book away from the threat of cancellation, and also comfortably outsold the other titles in this initiative. Following the end of You Decide, David would continue writing Captain Marvel for several years, following up this storyline with the introduction of Genus's sister, Scylla Vell, the official separation between himself and Rick Jones, and a climactic battle with the hero's future son, Ely Vell. The series would officially end in July of 2004, ending David's run at over 5 years and 61 issues. In 2022, he briefly returned to the character for a 5-issue miniseries alongside artist Juanan Ramirez, once again focusing on the relationship between Genus and Rick and providing one final swan song to these characters before the writer's unfortunate passing in May 2025. As a whole, David's Captain Marvel isn't just a high point of the You Decide contest, but a fairly underrated gem of early 2000s comics. It's a funny, smart and sincere series that managed to carve out a unique niche in the Marvel universe, and its enduring success despite the many attempts to cancel it is a testament to the excellent work that David, Chris Cross and their collaborators did to make both Genus Vell and Captain Marvel cult favourites amongst a new generation of readers. While both Marville and David's Captain Marvels are well-remembered titles for better or worse, the third entry in Marvel You Decide is a far more overlooked and forgotten series. At the time this contest began, the Ultimate Universe had become a massive success for Marvel Comics, with books like Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men frequently being amongst the best-selling titles of any given month. As such, Editor-in-Chief Joe Quesada was keen to expand this new continuity, creating not only ultimate versions of familiar Marvel heroes, but also introducing several brand new characters tailor-made for Earth 1610. It was this thought process that led to Ultimate Adventures, a 6-part series from writer Ron Zimmerman and artist Duncan Fegredo that introduced Hawkowl and Woody into the Ultimate Universe. Despite Quesada being the driving force behind this project, Ron Zimmerman is worth discussing when considering the creation of Ultimate Adventures. You see, by the end of 2001, Zimmerman was best known as a TV writer and a regular contributor to the Howard Stern radio show. Quesada, as part of a move to bring more entertainment writers into Marvel, such as Kevin Smith, Joss Whedon and J. Michael Straczynski, hired Zimmerman to join the company, where he initially worked on short stories for Spider-Man and the Punisher, before penning the ill-fated Get Kraven miniseries in 2002. Quesada selected Zimmerman to write Ultimate Adventures, which was designed to both introduce a set of brand new heroes into the fledgling universe and also serve as a playful jab at other popular characters, most notably Batman and Robin. I should also mention that even though the You Decide initiative was scheduled to run for 6 months, Ultimate Adventures actually took 18 months to complete, with sporadic releases between November of 2002 and September of 2003. Issue 1 of Ultimate Adventures introduces us to Hank Kipple, a cynical, rebellious teenager living in an orphanage in Chicago. One night, the orphanage is attacked by a group of armed robbers while evading the police, with Hank and the other children taken hostage. The kids are eventually saved by Hawkowl. The next day, the orphanage is visited by eccentric billionaire Jack Tanner, who explains his intentions to adopt a child due to his own background as an orphan. However, when Jack meets the various children at the orphanage, he's intrigued by Hank's brazen and disrespectful manner, and to the surprise of many, chooses to adopt him. In issue 2, Hank relocates to Tanner's mansion and remains hostile to his new family, while Jack tries to mentor Hank and help him process his grief and anger. After being enrolled in a nearby school, Hank is bullied by students and the eccentric principal. Meanwhile, it's revealed that Jack is indeed Hawkowl, with issue 3 seeing Hank discover his secret. This excitement quickly turns sour though, as Jack explains that he adopted Hank in order to make him into his sidekick. The pair then erupt into an argument, with Hank leaving and demanding he be returned to the orphanage. While a troubled Jack visits a priest for advice, we see the school principal's life crumble after one bad day, suffering a mental breakdown after discovering his wife is having an affair. He ultimately kills both his wife and her lover, taking on a Joker-like persona while plotting to take the high school hostage. Issue 3 concludes in quite interesting fashion, as Jack confronts Hank and apologises for his actions, pledging to be a father and a mentor and not force him into his life of crime fighting. The pair are interrupted by none other than the Ultimates. Throughout issue 4, we learn that the heroes have been sent to recruit Hawkowl into their team, with Captain America stating that Nick Fury has personally requested they bring Jack with them. Hawkowl, however, refuses to go along and sternly tells the heroes to leave his premises, stating that his loyalty is to protect Chicago and not following Fury or the government orders. While the Ultimates leave, we see the principal usher in his reign of terror throughout the school, turning it into his deadly playground. Hawkowl suits up to intervene, but forbids Hank from getting involved, fearing it's too dangerous a mission for a child. However, Jack proves to be no match for the sinister principal. Hank decides to take action, donning a makeshift costume and entering the school himself to free the students. Taking on the name Woody, he fights the principal until Hawkowl comes too, with the dynamic duo working together to defeat the principal and rescue the students. The following day, Hank and Jack reunite and they formally agree to become a superhero team. The comic then ends with Hawkowl and Woody surveying the city from atop a roof, leaping into action as a mugger confronts a scared family in a cinema's back alleyway. Ultimate Adventures is very much the forgotten third installment of the You Decide campaign. While Marville became infamous and David's Captain Marvel is well remembered by its fans, this comic has become something of an obscure feature of Marvel's Ultimate Universe. It takes a satirical approach to deconstructing familiar heroes like Batman and Robin, all while trying to firmly establish itself in the world of Earth 1610 through the use of the Ultimates in issue 4. Although I don't outright dislike this project, I think Duncan Fegredo's art is excellent, there are a couple of funny moments, and the character designs for Hawkowl and Woody are well done. The fact that it's so much a pastiche of other more popular heroes makes it feel less like a bold new corner of Ultimate Marvel and more of an over-the-top parody of DC's dynamic duo, having more in common with books like Frank Miller and Jim Lee's All-Star Batman and Robin than it does with Ultimate Spider-Man and its contemporaries. It's probably no surprise, therefore, that neither Hawkowl nor Woody actually appear in any future Ultimate titles, with Marvel seemingly forgetting about these characters just as soon as the You Decide contest ended. It should also be noted that Ultimate Adventures experienced numerous delays between issues, with this 6-issue title taking over 18 months to complete, all while failing to make an impression on both fans and critics. Following its conclusion, writer Ron Zimmerman left Marvel and the world of comics altogether, only briefly returning in 2010 for a follow-up installment on his Rawhide Kids series. Instead, he mainly worked in TV for the remainder of his life, before passing away at age 64 in June of 2022. Overall, Ultimate Adventures is both the least memorable entry in Marvel You Decide and a bizarre oddity in the Ultimate Universe's early days, becoming little more than a failed experiment and a strange, often forgotten piece of Marvel's modern history. Marvel's You Decide campaign came to an end in April 2003, with Captain Marvel by Peter David and Chris Cross being the unsurprising winner. Throughout each month the contest ran, David, Jemas and Quesada maintained a key eye on the sales data for each title, with Captain Marvel proving to be the runaway success from the very first issue, which sold more than the combined total of both Marville and Ultimate Adventures. Not only was David's series the best-selling, but it was also the best reviewed of the You Decide initiative. Meanwhile, both Marville and Ultimate Adventures were heavily criticised for their overtly satirical approach, which was often to the detriment of the story their creators were trying to tell, with Jemas' project in particular being derided by fans and critics alike. Despite the agreements made when You Decide began, neither Jemas nor Quesada, to my knowledge, went through with their pre-arranged punishments of taking a pie in the face or falling in a dunk tank at an upcoming convention, and Marvel were instead keen to swiftly move on from the You Decide fiasco. For Peter David though, this victory was vindication for his earlier attempts to save the Captain Marvel series from both cancellation and price increases. After the contest ended, David continued writing Captain Marvel for several years, eventually concluding his tenure with over 60 issues and becoming one of the character's most renowned writers up to that point. Considering the stakes, if David had lost, he likely would have been fired, so it's hard not to view this entire situation as a win for both creative vision and storytelling, and for creators standing up to the demands of corporate executives. David also humorously celebrated his victory by buying the domain to BillJemas.com, briefly using the site to display a short message poking fun at Jemas' portrayal of him in Marville issue 2. In the aftermath of this event, David remained a high-profile writer for Marvel Comics, working on titles such as X-Factor, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and even returning to the Incredible Hulk in later years. He remained a key figure in the comics industry up until his recent passing. Likewise, the failure of Ultimate Adventures didn't have a major impact on Joe Quesada's continued rise within Marvel. He remained editor-in-chief until the end of 2010, overseeing a period of renewed growth for the company and several massively successful series and events. While his legacy today is often intertwined with the polarizing One More Day storyline, it's hard to dispute Quesada's impact on revitalizing Marvel at the turn of the millennium. With all of that said though, the fate of Bill Jemas was far less harmonious. Although he remained the company's vice president and publisher, his leadership was defined by frequent high-profile clashes with writers and artists, with his feud with David being just one of many public disputes with notable creators. It was this combination of public clashes with other writers like Mark Waid and Grant Morrison, combined with Marville's negative reception and the failure of the Epic Comics imprint, that led to Jemas being formally dismissed from Marvel Entertainment in October 2003. For all of his work in saving the publisher from the brink of financial ruin, Jemas's tenure is largely defined by his polarizing management style, and for both its bizarre backstory and his decision to greenlight and continue it despite not being a comic book writer, Marville is, in my opinion, a perfect embodiment of Bill Jemas's tenure at Marvel. Now in 2026, close to a quarter century since its inception, Marvel's You Decide contest remains a strange and confusing footnote in the history of modern comics, a referendum on 3 creators and their distinct visions for what superhero stories should be, as well as a publishing event that somehow resulted in one title that became a cult hit and 2 others that the company are keen to make readers forget. Today, Marville is undoubtedly the most famous of these entries, but I still want to encourage everyone to revisit all of these books and experience each one for themselves, both for the individual quality of their respective stories and to fully understand the bizarre and unusual circumstances that led to the creation of Marvel's worst publicity stunt. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics, or if you want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Blue Sky, just at Owen Likes Comics. But that's all for this video. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.